Hello fellow YouTubers, this is Mr.Pokedude13 here to give you an exclusive look on Total Pokemon Island Rundown. I know I'm supposed to make a web series out of this over 2 years ago, but here's something that you might not need to know. I'm currently at college right now and I don't have enough time to make up this season along with the other 3 seasons I was gonna make. So each year I'm gonna upload at least the entire season rundown of each season that I was going to make a couple of years ago. So for now, enjoy this informative video of Total Pokemon Island. And as you can see, we're going to start off on the first episode. This is where they introduce a bunch of Pokemons, and they try to sell them into Pokenako Island. And we have our first team, the Screaming Sandshrews. And each one of them is just like the Screaming Gophers almost, except for extras. And here we have the Killer Cavanhas, which consists of Gligar, Meditite, Slowpoke, Bulbasaur, Shiny Totodile, Tyrogue, Snorunt, Shuckle, Mankey, Vernon, Murkrow, Badoo, Sneasel, Waltz, Gulpin, Skitty, and Happiny. And each of these competitors had to go to the new cabins selected around the island, and many of them are trying to sell in. Then afterwards, the first challenge was to jump off the cliff, filled with the infested Sharpedos and a mysterious Gyarados, I think. And the Killer Cavernas went first, and Slowpoke and Shuckles were taking a long time, and Mankey would grow impatient, and so she decided to throw them off. Then Gligar almost thought it was me, so she threw them off as well. And then Badoo, Happiny, and Skitty tried to calm it down, but that didn't work, so Meditite had to use her psychic power to teach her a lesson. Pretty much everyone went except for Snorunt, Meditite, and Venonat, since they were cowards. So, meanwhile, the Screaming Sandshrews had to pick someone, and they picked Mama, but she refuses, and Eevee forced her to do it anyway. So, she grabbed her and tossed her off. And then everyone except for Ladybot and Azul jumped off the cliff. And Natu and Lickitung were the last ones left. And Natu and Lickitung made a big splash, and it caused everyone to splash over the shore. Natu was furious about that, and Lickitung was hoping that he would forgive him later. Meanwhile, in the Killer Cavanha's cabin, Meditite was trying to beg the others to not vote her off, but Sneasel, on the other hand, decides to pick her and the rest of the others that refused to jump. And everyone was agreeing with Sneasel. However, Waltz kind of messed things up by making a sexist comment on girls. And then later during the ceremony, Meditite and Waltz were at the bottom too, and then in the end, Waltz got eliminated for making a sex comment. And then later on episode 2 is a classic wake up sleepathon or something, where the contestants has to stay up for 24 hours. Shiny Totodile, Sneasel, Glameow, and Growlithe were the final 4, until Totodile and Growlithe drop out. Then lastly, Sneasel and Glameow were there, and Sneasel dropped out. Meanwhile, Mankey was furious at her team because she was looking for an MP3 player, which Mawile stole for her behindly. And thanks to her temper, Mankey was eliminated. Then in the third episode, it was a basketball challenge, and everyone was doing their best on it and such. But Slowpoke, on the other hand, he was too slow, and Natu refuses to play sports since he's not a sport fan. So since the team were tied and Beedrill was tied, he decided to send both teams eliminating Natu and Slowpoke. And then in episode 4 is a talent contest. And then each contestant had to make the appropriate talents and show it off. Machamp, Mawile, and Growlithe for Screaming Sandshrew, Bulbasaur, Badoo, and Meditite for Killer Cavanhas. were presented. Mom was supposed to do a ballet routine, but instead she grabbed Glammeow's diary and read it towards the entire world, which was embarrassing. Very bad. Very embarrassing. Then Bulbasaur's skateboard was broken, Meditite lost her focus, and Badu had lost her talent. So now the best hope of winning this challenge is to find someone with the best challenge. So at the end, they decided to pick Gligar for this part of the challenge. And unexpectedly, he's an excellent rapper, and that gave the team the win. Meanwhile, the Screaming Sandshrews had to pick someone, and they all decided to pick Machop, since handsome and good looks wasn't good enough for the talent show. Then episode 5, it was a wrestling challenge, and they had to pick 6 members of each team had to pick someone. Shiny Tolda and Glameow fought each other, but Meowth was beaten with Tolda's water gun attack. And then Growlithe and Bulbasaur faced each other, but Growlithe uses Flamethrower and burned Bulbasaur. Then Magnemite and Gligar was facing each other, then Gligar beat him with an excessive move. Then Eevee and Sneasel were facing each other, and Eevee used her tough power to defeat him. And then Aipom and Tyro were facing each other, and then those two got beaten up badly, and which made a team tie. Then Meditite uses her psychic power and made Pikachu confused. And Pikachu was somehow eliminated unexpectedly. And it turns out that Mawile wicked the votes because everyone was going to vote for her after what she has done to Glameow. Which is a really bad move. Very. In episode 7, each team got a fossil stone, and they're supposed to take care of it throughout the day. And in the end, they would receive prehistoric Pokemon as the new team members. The Screaming Sandshrews came in first, and they won a Little Leap, and then the Killer Caverns got a Cranidos. And since they came in second place, they were up for elimination. And then they blamed Vananet for it because he was in charge of the babysitting the fossil, and so they thrown him off. In episode 8 is where each team has to go to the campsite for a night. Mawile made an alliance with Azura Smoochum since she finds him very desperate and gullible. Meanwhile, Skitty and Happiny got lost. In the Screaming Sandshrew side, they were enjoying the nice campfire, and Legaton was doing a scary story about he confronted with an Ursa Ring, and many of them didn't believe him. And then they realized Aipom was missing, and then suddenly an Ursa Ring shows out of nowhere, and it turns out to be Shiny Aipom in disguise. And many of them were angry, and then another Ursa Ring shows up, and this time it was a real one. And then afterwards, in the Killer Caverns team, Sneasel told a very scary story that frightened the heck out of everyone. Even Badu and Corny. Meanwhile, Skitty and Happiny spent a night in the cave, and then the Ursula from last night that scared the Screaming Sandshrew. You get the idea. In the end, Screaming Sandshrew had made it back into the camp with everyone, except for Killer Caverns, they lost because Happiny and Skitty were lost, and then they all voted for Skitty since her natural guide system had failed her. In episode 9, each contestant had to face their own personal fears in order to win each challenge, and many of them were unpleased. And then in the end, these guys were the lucky competitors facing their fears, and it was a tie, and Meditite was a tiebreaker, and she would earn 3 points if she had to stand on the ice for so long. And she couldn't bear it anymore, and therefore she was eliminated. However, Tywoke and Snowman did the most pathetic job on conquering their fears, and therefore they were eliminated. In episode 10, each member of each team must find one of the Pacific plant Pokemon that Beedrill told them to find. And they had to bring them back before one of them comes in second place. The Killer Cavernas win by luck, while the Screaming Sandshrews lost. And they all voted for Meowth because Meowth had to go back to the Team Rocket headquarters for an urgent business. Meanwhile, in episode 11, each contender has to go to Skull Island and they must find some special gems on the island. Azul found a Clefairy doll. She decides to keep it as a souvenir. And the Killer Cavernas was doing a horrible time of searching. Meanwhile, each team found one of the gems that Beedrill told them to find. And they had to bring them back before one of them comes in second place. And they must hurry up and find them. And the Killer Cavernas made it back thanks to Cranio's fear of water. Meanwhile, Cacnea was going back to Team Rocket's headquarters as well, because they needed him. Meanwhile, in episode 12, it was a paintball deer hunting challenge, and everyone minus Ekans and Castform were all deers and hunters. And they all searched for deers. And the Screaming Sandshrews lost because Mawile had turned on Eevee, Azul, and Lily, while Eevee and the others were facing on each other. Meanwhile, Magnemite got hit by a Ursaring and he was sent home due to a major injury. In episode 13, it was a basic food eating contest and they had to eat Chef Carnivine's disgusting meals. And many of them were unpleased on what food they had to eat. Meanwhile, it was a tie for each team, and the final competitors were to eat lava cookie was Gligar and Meditite, and Azul and Ambipom on eating the hot tomato berries. And then the Killer Cavernas won because Gligar managed to hold it in with the lava cookies, and Meditite did the same thing as well. And the Screaming Sandshrews, they couldn't handle it anymore. And meanwhile, the rest of the team found out that Azul kept a Clefairy doll for herself that she picked up from Skull Island, and they eliminated her because of the curse that Beedrill mentioned. In episode 14 is where Mawile had bring in Blossom as the new member of the Girls Alliance. And during the challenge, Beedrill told each team to find one of the Pacific Water-type Pokemon for to bring them back in the camp, so that way they can have them as their teammates. Lickitung and Ekans were told to find Squirtle for Mawile and the girls. Glameow and the other group found Wooper, and Gligar and the others found Psyduck sun tanning. Sneasel and the last group found Delibird in the nest. And the Screaming Sandshrews won because Happiny and the others could not get Delibird out of the nest on time, so Shuckle and Happiny were eliminated. The next challenge was a triathlon challenge, where they had to go through each courses doing one of the basic challenge. Lickitung, Ambipom, and Squirtle were nominated, and Meditite was an excellent runner, and she managed to beat Lickitung. Squirtle and Murkrow were placed in the swimming docks, and they were supposed to fight each other into the dock. Meanwhile, Ambipom and Shiny Totodile, they were supposed to drink down a bunch of sodas, but due to Totodile's sugar rush, it cost the team since he drank too much. And Murkrow and Shiny Totodile were both eliminated. What a shame. He's my favorite. In episode 16, it starts off with Sneasel and the boys were kept picking on Gligar for a bunch of pranks, and they weren't like it. Meditite tried to convince Badu and Hoppet to stick together since they're the only girls left in the Killer Cavernas. And then later on during the day, Carnivine brought in the competitors to do the military train challenge, and many of them weren't pleased of doing this challenge, and in fact, it was killing them. And then later, those guys at the top were sat out of the challenge, and the others at the bottom, they had to go through a basic night training challenge. It was a little bit too much for them. Then the final three was Glameow, Mawile, and Lickitung, and Meditite, Sneasel, and Bulbasaur. And Sneasel, since he was in juvie a long time, he provoked Carnivine so much, he decided to put him in the outhouse. And it was pretty dark and scary. Meditite shows up and tries to cheer her up, and Sneasel knows that she has feelings for him, and she tries to prove that he doesn't. She doesn't, but he refuses. So the only way how he can prove that Meditite is the one, he decided to bring her out and do a massive prank on Beatrice and try to steal the food. And so they did. Then Sneasel and Meditite kissed, and that was a lot of shocker. Meanwhile, during the morning, everyone had to hang on to the trees, and then in the end, the Screaming Sandra's won thanks to Glameow's sharp claws, and since she's used to hanging upside down for the rest of her life. And then during the challenges, it was between Gligar and Meditite, and everyone assumes that Gligar would be going home, but instead, Meditite was eliminated, which was pretty much a shocker to everyone. But it turns out, Gligar rigged the votes as payback for Sneasel for pranking him constantly. Well played, Gligar. In episode 17, it was a cooking challenge, and they had to cook some best meals for Beedrill, Carnivine, and the rest of these judges down below, Duo and Gibble. Look at the ones at the top are the ones that are setting out. The rest of the bottom are participating. And each member of the team were doing fine. Meanwhile, for the Screaming Sandshrew, Mawile was pretty much annoying everyone with bossy tactics. And so they decided to lock her up in the fridge, so that way she won't interfere. And so the Screaming Sandshrews were making the best meals, such as spaghetti, salad bar, chicken soup, and pizza with live mushrooms. And the Killer Kafanas brought a plain cheeseburger, sushi, apple pie, and chicken nuggets. The Killer Kavan has won because they did an excellent job of the meals. The Screaming Sandshrews, however, they brought live mushroom toppings for the pizza. And it was plain disgusting. And the ones who were in charge of the pizza was Ekans and Ladybug. And before they eliminated, Duo and Gibble were given away by Beedrill as the Constellation Prize. And then so Ekans and Ladybug were eliminated. Meanwhile, in the Killer Cabanas, Gligar made another alliance with Gulpin, Smush, Shroomish, and Psyduck, since he feels that us nerds must stick together. In episode 18 is where each guy's alliance were pranking each other non-stop. Meanwhile, Mawile brought the girls out for a quick discussion on the girls' alliance, and Glameow and Eevee overheard the discussion, and they decided to form a hero alliance, so that way they can get rid of Mawile and her followers. The next challenge was to babysit the eggs for the day, and if one of them brings back the eggs back, they will win. Meanwhile, Sneasel brought the guys out, and he decides that they're pretty much outnumbered. They need more numbers in the team, so they decided to pick Delibird to steal the smut. Meanwhile, Mawile and Eevee and Castform were fighting over the egg, and they decided to give it to Apon since she'll be in charge of it. And so, but then Delibird buried her with snowballs, and he stole the team's eggs. And Badu was babysitting the killed Kavana's egg while Bulbasaur was babysitting the Screaming Sandshrews egg. And those two started to admit feelings for each other on the confessionals. The Kill Kavanas win since they have 2 eggs, and the Screaming Sandshrews lost the egg. And at the end, the Kill Kavanas have Chinli and Fampi. Castle and Apom were eliminated. But before Apom could go, the military showed up and they were about to take her away, but she got away, and leaving Castform to be up for elimination on the boat. In episode 19, Beachel had to go telling each team to find Pacific birds to bring them back in the giant cage. The Screamers and Troops were having difficulties for leadership titles. Glameon and Mama were fighting over the leader title, but they decided to split up into different groups anyway. Glameon's group found a flock of artilleries and Swablues, and the only way how to get a Swablu is by driving the artilleries away. Lickitung found an egg, and when it hatched, a Swablu appeared, and it thinks that Lickitung is his mother. Glameon's Mawa's team went out to the attic to find Spearows, and unexpectedly, a Fearow came and chased them away. Mama found a Hoothoot and she gobbled them up with her mouth so she could take them away. And then each team brought each of their birds back. Meanwhile, Sneasel's Guys Alliance, they found the Pidgeys, and Kratos used his headbutt to get them, but instead he scared them away until one fell out. And then Gligo's Alliance found a flock of starlings, and they don't know how to do with it. Mawa's group found a flock of Wingulls, but then Glibbles scared them away, and they blamed him for it. Gulpin brought his chocolate bar out, and he was gonna eat it until one of the starlings found attracted to it and wants it. And so the Glygos Alliance found the Fampi and the others tried to find the Farfetch, and Gligo and the others decided to help them out. And they were pretty much having difficulties trying to find them. Then Gligo had an idea. They decided to use the special attack powers to trap one of them. And so they did. And so the Farfetch were defeated. And Gligo and the others bought the 3 Farfetches for the Fampi and the others. And meanwhile, the Mawilds group found a cave and it was full of Zubats, and they were scared up. But Gibble, however, grabbed the Zubat and they decided to disguise it as a Wingull. And as the team brought back the fake Wingull, the secret was out when the makeup started to fade away. And the Killer Kavanas won since they did not bring back the characters. But as the constellation prize for each team, Starling and Swablu were placed on each team. Gibble was eliminated for coming up with the idea to fake up the Zubat with Wingull. In episode 20, let's see, it was a basic challenge, I think. Wait, no. Oh yeah, it was Beetle decided not to have a challenge and skip straight to elimination since he realizes there's too many competitors and one of them must go. But here's the trick. Each team must vote for one of the opposing teammates. Mama brought most of the girls out to decide which guys of the Kill Kavanas to vote for. And the guys were doing the same thing on the Kill Kavanas girls. And the Glygos Alliance try to figure out which girl members of the Screaming Sandshrews should they eliminate. And they didn't know who, but Gligo had one idea, but he won't reveal it just yet. And Starling shows up and asks if he could join the alliance. Meanwhile, Sneasel and his guys' alliance decided to figure out which girl should they vote off, and Badu and the rest of the main girls in Kill Kavanas try to figure out which guy of the Screaming Sandshrews should they go for. Meanwhile, in the elimination ceremony, the Kill Kavanas were first, and it was between Sneasel, Delibird, Hoppip, Genie, and Psyduck. And Sneasel got the last Oran Berry, which leaves Delibird, Hoppip, Genie, and Psyduck to be eliminated. What a shocker. And before they get to go, the Screaming Sandras were up next. The bottom 5 was Lickitung, Dodo, Blossom, and Whooper and Chirrupy. Lickitung got the last Oran Berry since most of the guys vote most of the girls out, while the last 3 girls were voting for Duo. And so these guys were eliminated. And then Beedrill announced that the teams had finally merged. And before they get to merge, he brought in some extra competitors back, such as Mankey and Ambipom. And then in episode 21, the girls were placed in the Screaming Sandra's cabin, while the guys, however, they all stick to the Killer Caverna's cabin. And many of the girls were not so thrilled about rooming, while the guys, however, partied. Then the next challenge was a say uncle type of game where they had to go through horrible tortures on the spinning wheel to see which one can handle the most pain. Gulpin and Shroomish did horrible on their efforts. Everyone else did their best and they were safe. And the last nominee was Mankey, and she had to wrestle with Abomasnow, and that failed. And so Mankey, Gulpin, and Shroomish were eliminated. In episode 22, the contestants had to stay in the platform filled with Sharpedos. And the squirrel fell in, and he was about to be attacked by the Sharpedos. And Phanpy slipped in, and she was about to be mauled by the Sharpedos. And then Sneasel decided to push Gligar in as payback for voting off Meditite. And just before he fell in, Starly swooped in and took his fall. And then Squirrel, Starly, and Phanpy got mauled by Sharpedos. And those 3 were eliminated. In episode 23, there was a classic game of treasure hunt, where each contestant must find the keys to the treasure chest all over the island before sunset. And then, meanwhile, Gligar decided to form a new guys alliance with Lickitung and Lily, and Mawile decides to make the new girls alliance with Swablu and Ambipom. Meanwhile, Bulbasaur and Badu met each other, and they both kissed, and it was a shocker to the girls' alliance. And Mawile intends to break up the couples for good because she fears that couples means alliance, and she intends to make her girls' alliance to be the only alliance left. Meanwhile, Glameow and Growlithe found both the keys, and they started mid-feelings, and they kissed, and Mawile saw those again, and she was once again furious. And she decided to break both Glameow and Growlithe apart first. And so she told the girls to find the treasure keys, and meanwhile Mawile plays a dirty trick on Glameow by placing a fake note. Smoochum brought her in and as part of the plan. Once Glameow read the fake love letter, she first thought it was from Growlithe, and she decided to head over the beach. Mawile brought Growlithe to the beach, and she started to fake act her sympathy to gain Growlithe's trust, and then as soon as Glameow was approaching, she decided to kiss Growlithe to make her frustrated and upset. And it worked. So now both Growlithe and Glameow were deeply frustrated and upset with each other. Meanwhile, everyone but Swablu found the treasure key, and once they opened it, they realized they got worthless junks. But Mawile, however, she receives the invincibility ticket and she is safe from the elimination. Meanwhile, at the elimination ceremony, Swablu and Growlithe were the last two to not get the orange berry, so therefore they were eliminated. And that was pretty much a shocker. Pretty much. Episode 24 is where Glamios was thinking about Growlithe and Eevee tried to cheer her up by thinking of a plan to get back at Mawile for what she did to Growlithe and her. And Glamios decided to go with it. Meanwhile, Mawile and her remaining Girls Alliance decided to step things up, and Smoochum was starting to question her authority, and Mawile sees this as a major threat. And she fears that Smoochum would betray her, and so she decided to backstab her first before she gets to. Meanwhile, the next challenge is a simple game of hide-and-seek where they must hide from Chef Carnivine with his water gun blaster. Meanwhile, Sneasel rallied up the remaining guys left on the island and forms an ultimate guys alliance to get rid of most of the girls. Gligar and Bulbasaur were somewhat opposed to this, but they were forced to join anyway in order to keep the bromance steady. Gligar, however, he still intends to keep the Nerds Alliance alive, and Bulbasaur intends to keep Mawile Badu safe. And everybody was doing their best to hide except for Smoochum. And Carnivine catches everyone except for Eevee and Mawile, which they hid good. Meanwhile, Sneasel and his guys alliance trying to figure out who should they vote for. And he decided to nominate Badu since she's the most athletic and the nicest person left. And then most of the girls vote for Smoochum due to her stupid antiques. And Lickitung was at the bottom 3 because of his weird natural habits. And so, at the very end, Lickitung and Smoochum were surprisingly safe, and Badu was instantly eliminated for having most votes from the guys. In episode 25, Bulbasaur was deeply saddened about Badu's elimination, and he couldn't bear it anymore. And then, meanwhile, Gligar tries to think of another plan to get rid of most of the guys, and Lickitung and Lily weren't thrilled about this. And the next challenge was a simple canoe race throughout the island, and each of them must make it back. At the end, Badu and Bulbasaur were eliminated. Okay, and here's the part where I'm just gonna basically tell you which contestants got eliminated instead of telling you what the entire episode was, okay? In episode 26 is where Ambipom was eliminated for accidentally shooting Mawile since she thought of her as a Standler. In episode 27 is where Gligar and Smoochum were both eliminated since they failed on the tri-handed competition challenge. And Sneasel finally got his revenge by eliminating Gligar. And Smoochum was aware of Mawile's scheme. In episode 28 is where Lily was eliminated for not doing his best. In episode 29 is where everyone in this secret island accidentally voted for Eevee to be eliminated. In episode 30 is where Sneasel came in 4th place when he was placed with Lickitung to spend a night in the wilderness and find their way back to camp before Mawile and Glameow could make it back to the campsite. In episode 31 is where there was a triple dog dare challenge, and Mawile did not participate in the refused to take her last deal, which was to have her giant mouth clamped off. The episode 32 is where the final two was Lickitung and Glameow, and then there was basically a race throughout the island, and there were so many surprises on Glameow and Lickitung until Lickitung offered a promise to everyone that he would give them the sickest party in the century, leaving a few supports for Glameow. And throughout the day, everyone was facing each other. And then Leia Lickitung had won the season. It was awesome. In episode 33, which is a special episode, is where everyone in this new surprise island were enjoying themselves and they figured they could finally hang. But Beatrice, however, shows up with a briefcase that has at least $10 billion. And he's willing to give it to a lucky competitor who brings it back at the dock of shame at once. And so each competitor went through the island searching for the briefcase. And the first group found the case in the island near the beach, and they all fight for it. And while they were fighting for it, Mama and Gligar had stole the case, and Pikachu stole it from Sneasel and Manatite afterwards, and then Happy, Machop, and the girls stole it. And near the end, these lucky competitors were fighting over for the briefcase near the dock, and at the end they lost the suitcase from the Sharpedo. And Beatrice was not so thrilled about having no winner, and so he decided to make these lucky competitors to compete in season 2, and which will be called Total Pokemon Filmlot, or I don't know, something that's like Total Drama Action almost. And that's it for now, folks. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll be able to upload the next Total Pokemon Rundown eventually. Maybe next year or so. Okay then, peace out.